Hello, my name is Katrin and welcome to my garden. There's no head gardeners around here. If you are like me and you just have a normal garden, but you're trying to turn it into your dream little space, then you are in the right place. I've put together the highlights of my year in my cottage garden. If you have some messy corners, some buckets of weed, and you're figuring it out as you're going, then I hope you get some inspiration from this video. I have a semi-detached garden that half of it has a wall. I'd love to say I have a walled garden, but that would be me being fun. And I had some highs and lows in the garden this year and a little bit of overwhelm. So here is my journey. I hope you enjoy it. Let's go all the way back to January, and even looking at this footage, seeing all that, it just looks cold, doesn't it? And it just looks wet. If you are watching and you are in Ireland or the UK or even the likes of the Netherlands, that kind of direction, it was a lovely wet winter. For the first 10 minutes of this footage, keep an eye on how dreadful my grass was looking because I was insisting on doing some jobs in the garden in January to keep myself sane. And one of them was reorganising the greenhouse. But you will see later in the video that I did manage to salvage that grass. So it does go to show that even in January, when it looks absolutely awful, come summertime, there's a redemption and everything heals and everything comes back. Something I needed to do in the greenhouse was I needed to rejig the kind of staging system that I have. It just wasn't working for me anymore. And I wanted to make some areas where it's easier for me to be potting up stuff, and then also some shelves and just some areas for me to sow some seeds and basically just give me like a better work kind of space, like a workbench. And I have to say, doing this job in January was great because it really did set me up for the rest of the year. And I also freed up some space in the greenhouse because there's obviously certain times of the year when the greenhouse is going to be busier. So like springtime when it's full of seedlings, then summertime it kind of clears out. But then come autumn time, things like dahlias and pots and all of the kind of non-frost hardy stuff come into the greenhouse and it's full once again. So just like nature, even the greenhouse has its different phases and uses in the year. Now, back in January, I was extra eager, but I think this year I might just hold off a little bit. So in January, I did start off some sweet peas in milk cartons, and I did some in root trainers as well. And if I'm being totally honest, they still died. So you can start your hardy annuals. So like things like sweet peas, you can start them before Christmas or you can start them early in the year and they'll just grow lots of foliage, and then you can pinch them out and then plant them out maybe like April time, which is what I did. But I found that the ones that I planted out early, they just died. And I ended up having to just buy some in the shop as a plug. I don't know if it's because I started them too early in the season. The previous year, I had a way better year with sweet peas. So I think when it comes to seed sowing this year, there's a few things I want to do job-wise in the garden in January, like mulching and stuff. But I think I'm just going to leave the seed sowing this year till around March time. Now, another job that I actually forgot I had done, so I'm having a lot of fun looking back at the footage from this year. I put these toppers on my raised beds. So my raised beds were looking just a little bit basic, not gonna lie. And I wanted to elevate them. So if I had the budget, I would love to swap out the wood pieces and replace them with the chunky sleepers. However, we do not have the budget for that. So I got these top pieces that sit over the raised bed. So you kind of have a handy little, well, you can sit on them. Although they're not that strong. My niece and nephew can sit on them. But if my chunky bum sits on them, they may break. And it's handy for putting your pot of tea or your snips or your little garden tool or something. But generally, I put my pot of tea on them. And again, you can see how bad the grass was. Oh God. I promise it gets prettier throughout the video. So putting these little toppers on, and they were pre-cut as well. So I bought my raised beds 3 years ago from quickcrop.ie, and they had these pre-cut little toppers that sit on them. So I just bought them and added them on. But straight away, it just elevated them and made them look a bit more, I don't know, more cottage garden and less allotment, if that makes sense. Also, nothing wrong with them looking allotment. We all do what we have to do and use the materials we have. But I just wanted to make them look a bit prettier. Using a clean, sharp pruner and wearing some gloves, remove any dead or damaged canes as well as any small, twiggy ones and crossing stems. Remove any canes that are growing towards the centre of the shrub and create an open vase shape. Old stems that are grey and woody don't bloom as well, so you can cut these back to the base. Cut back the remaining tall canes by about 2/3 and make cuts just above an outward facing leaf node. Remove any leaves from the remaining canes and gather any fallen leaves to prevent the spread of disease or bugs, and mulch your roses with well rotted farmyard manure. Back in late January, early February, I did chit my potatoes. So I like to do a first early batch of potatoes and do them in bags. But again, just like the sweet peas, I seem to have had a better year the previous year than I did this year for them. So I'm not sure what I'm going to do for the year ahead. I might put them into a raised bed now, not in this garden. I might do them where the bees are. I'll share a bit more about the bees later on. Did you find that some of the things that you tried to grow in 2024 were worse or better than the previous year? I love chatting to other gardeners as well to see, because sometimes you might think that, oh, you're just not doing it right. But then when you chat to other gardeners, they're like, yeah, actually, I struggled with that as well. I think with the wet kind of winter, there was just a lot more slugs, wasn't there? And yeah, more things to chomp on your seedlings. One of my favourite jobs to do in probably March-ish time is I just love the big cleanup. Now this year I did feel like I was, a bit behind, but looking back I was like, actually, I'm not that far behind. I'll be totally honest, I kind of had a year where I felt like I was chasing my tail in the garden. But listen, there's always a job to do. One of my favourite though is I will sweep the paths. I love bagging up the last little leaves and just cutting back things and mulching the bed so that everything looks a bit tidier. Now what I think I will do for 2025 is, I think I'm going to order my bag of mulch in January, and I'm going to start mulching the beds to make them look tidy, because I did it later this year, and when you've got foliage from plants starting to kind of come up like the spring bulbs, and then I'm throwing the mulch over it, I think I'm going to try to do it a bit earlier. So I think I might order my bag, have it here for January, and then that can be my January job, just going around and mulching the beds and making them tidy. Now also pay close attention to the front. So that footage a couple of seconds ago, that square patch in my front garden, that had the biggest transformation this year. So you will see later in the video that I did get some raised beds built in the front, because the front for ages has just been a rectangular patch of grass, and I wanted it to be another little section in the garden. So I did two things here. So one of them, I had an experiment because I had some cardboard left over from a delivery. And I also had some soil that was sitting in a bag. So I decided to do an experiment and do a no-dig mini meadow, which towards the end of the video, you will see the progress and how that turned out. And I was like, it's just grass. Do you know what? I can have the experiment. If it doesn't work out, I can just mow it, and yeah, they can be something else. Also in the front as well, I had some little wooden edges that were coming up to, like, I'm going to say 8 or 9 years old. And they were literally crumbling at my fingertips. And I had some wooden sleepers that I actually bought to do the raised bed in the front myself. But honestly, I was exhausted. I had book number 2 was just finished. I had no time or energy left to be building raised beds. So I decided to use those wooden pieces that I had just to temporarily replace that rotten edging. And then when I got the project done in the front, where I got the raised beds built, I paid the guy to build them who did the concrete base for my greenhouse a couple of years ago. It was like my little treat to myself. Normally I do build everything. My regular viewers will see that I do most of the work myself on the channel and in the garden. So this was a nice treat to get someone else to do the raised beds for me. With the no dig meadow, this was an experiment, and I did sow some native Irish wildflower seeds. And the company that I bought them from, they did recommend that I remove the top layer of grass. Obviously, wildflower seeds and grass, the grass is going to outcompete the wildflower seeds. When I made my raised beds out the back, they're no dig, so I did the same thing. I put cardboard in them, and then I put layers of soil on top. So the cardboard just stops the light getting at the grass and kills it. So my mini meadow did take this year, but it wasn't as, I got a lot of foliage, did get some flowers, but not as much as I was expecting. So I'm hoping that next year it may take better. So what I'll do is I'll sow in some more annual seeds into it, and we can see what grows in it. But you'll see later on in the video that I think it was a successful experiment. Now, this year is the year I also became a beekeeper. Now, I didn't start off with the year thinking I was going to become a beekeeper. I signed up to do a local beekeeping course for beginners with my local Beekeepers Association. And it was like 6 weeks of evening classes, and you pretty much learned, everything from the basics of beekeeping. Now, I do have a separate video for a year with the bees, and I go into things in a lot more detail. So that video will be up after this one. So if you're new to the channel, just make sure you hit the subscribe button and keep an eye out for it. But yeah, that will be up soon, and that goes into everything I learned about bees in more detail. I am not the biggest fan of winter. Everything is just, you know what, it's dark nights, it's just damp, but it is what it is. But one thing that gives me joy and makes me appreciate where I live is when I start to see spring bulbs popping up. As soon as I see a snowdrop, I am like, that's it. We are over the hump of winter. Brighter days are coming, and there's so many more flowers. Even just going to the garden centre in like early March, there's loads of primroses, you have all of the spring bulbs, there's just more in colour. And I just feel like it's that little smile in the garden because things are just going to get better and everything is going to be luscious and full once again. Now, I know some viewers who are watching, you may be positioned, especially there's some viewers like in Canada and America. I see you with the comments about your harsh winters that you get. So I know some people watching have a lot of snow right the way up until kind of April time. So your growing season is a bit shorter. So I know that spring bulbs might not. They kind of come later for you. So I am lucky because where I live, so in the UK and Ireland, they do come that bit earlier because our winters, aside from a little bit of frost, where I'm positioned anyway, it's rare for us to get heavy snow on mountains or, things like that. Yes, there is, but even then it is not like it is in other places. So the days, they are starting to get longer, and all the greenery, the garden is getting more lush, even if it's just foliage and a couple of tulips. And you know what, just looking at this footage gives me joy because really, it's only a couple of weeks. It's only a couple of weeks now and I will be back in my luscious happy place. So in March, we had quite a kind of chilly March. I'm going to try and think back to what March was like. I know it was quite wet. I think the temperatures were a bit colder than normal. So I struggled to get a lot of my seedlings to germinate. So in the greenhouse, obviously, you have lots more light. However, I don't heat my greenhouse because it's just too expensive to heat it electrically. I do have a little heater in there. Maybe heat mats might be something for this year ahead. But I put all the little propagator lids on my seed trays. And like I'd say I had about like 60% germination. And I used like seed soil as well. I didn't just usually just throw in any old soil. I did use seed soil. But yeah, I remember I wasn't overly happy with the amount of kind of germination I got. Also, when it comes to my garden, I am a cut flower queen. I just want loads of pretty annuals, loads of perennials. Those are like beautiful flowers, cut flowers. There's something I am thinking about, but I need to kind of add it up from a cost perspective is I do have a little bit of space where the bees are. So the bees that I got, they're not in my own garden just because I'm in like a residential area and my neighbours are quite close. However, I do have a little patch where the bees are that I could grow some veg there. So I can keep the pretty plants in my own garden. And then I can grow the veg off-site. I do have a little bit of veg things dotted around the garden, but like nothing fancy. Nothing like Monty Don's veg garden at all. This year I also used those compostable pots. That's quite a mouthful. Compostable pots. Say that 5 times. And my reasoning behind this was from a lazy perspective. It meant that I could just put the compostable pot into the soil and it just degrades down and breaks down into the soil. Now, could it have been the compostable pots? But I don't think so. And I also sowed loads of different varieties of sunflowers, like red ones and stuff, but the germination was just quite bad on them. So I don't know. I think, well, let's just see what the weather shows at us this year. Maybe I'll hold off until kind of sowing in April because, April until mid-May, June, listen, plenty of time to get a bit of germination going. If there is one thing that you are guaranteed to find somewhere in my garden is a messy corner. I'm not going to say I'm a bit of a hoarder, but sometimes there may be a piece of wood or something or a random pot, even a broken pot. And I'll think to myself, oh, I could use that for something. But unfortunately, in my house and my garden, I don't have a garage. I don't have the luxury of like a hidden space where I can kind of store things like that. Those just in case things. So I kind of have to be a bit ruthless. and I can't hang on for things too long. If I hang on to something and I don't use it, then I need to bring it to the recycle centre or pass it on to someone who is going to use it. But if you do like a satisfying little declutter or a corner cleanup, then I'm your girl, because I make a mess and then have to come along and clean up the mess. So there is no shame over here on this channel. We are all the same. The manicured corners, they're for Instagram, but the realness, that's kept on YouTube. One of my favourite jobs of the year is mulching. So I will order a ton bag of fine bark mulch, and it can be anywhere from like 120, 150, depending on where you're going to get it from, and then obviously delivery as well. And I will spread this over everything. And I love doing it in spring because I don't sweep off any of the leaves or whatever, I just leave them to rot down. But it does look a little bit messy. So I just put a load of mulch on top. So if there's any little hibernating insects, they've got another layer. They've got another duvet put on top of them. You can mulch with, you know, a fine bark or just a thicker bark. You could use leaf mold, or you could use farmyard manure as well. And the great thing about it as well, whatever you use will break down into the soil throughout the year. It's also really good at helping retain moisture into the soil. So if you notice, like when the soil, well, if you have bare soil and it dries out, it goes very like clay-like and hard. So by putting a mulch on top of that, it helps prevent that from happening. You can also use like grass clippings as well to mulch. And definitely coming into summertime, if we have a really dry kind of spell, it's helpful at keeping water retained. So you can water your beds and then put some mulch on it. But just make sure you don't mulch something that's dry, if that makes sense. So give it a good soak, water it well, and then pop your mulch on top. But hope you can agree, it looks nice and tidy when it's done. I also cut my hydrangeas back after Christmas, so I'll do it as late as I can. Even though I said earlier we don't get a lot of frost, well, especially where I am, I can still get some. So I'll prune the hydrangeas around about April time. So those mop head ones I'll do around about April time. But the other ones, like hydrangea Annabelle, I have two of them in the front. I actually cut them back a bit sooner because I saw Monty Don doing it on Gardener's World. I think those ones are a bit more hardy and they grow on new wood, whereas the mop head ones they flower on new wood, whereas the mop head ones flower on last year's wood. So I only cut like a third off them. A little quick seedling update. As you can see, the germination was not great, and I think this was coming towards the end of May. Yeah, this next bit of footage is giving my heart some joy because, first of all, it is sunny. And even just looking at some sunny footage in the depths of winter just gives my soul some hope for the garden season ahead. Now, I was saying earlier that in my front patch of grass in the front garden that I got some raised beds made. So I didn't put these together myself. I was feeling luxurious. I paid someone to do it for me. So I wanted to create a raised flower bed on the front. So like I have a small wall, so I wanted a double height raised bed that went around the perimeter of it. The reason why I wanted a double height was because I wanted to plant plants for screening. So I look out onto a road and my neighbour's garden, which is nice. However, I would rather my view be of some plants. So I don't want to put up like a big hedge or anything like that. I wanted to put things that, I could see through so that they're going to give me some height. They're going to give me some screening, but it's not going to block out light or anything like that. And I was after coming back from Chelsea and we had bloom here in Ireland. So I was after looking at all of them show gardens and I went out to Tully Nurseries. I think I spent about 100 quid on plants, maybe 120. And I just was like, I'm going to make myself a mini show garden in the front. So I just did a load of perennials. There is some verbascum. I have some hardy geraniums. There was a penstemon there for a bit of height. I also got an amelanchier, so it was quite a young one. So that's like a large shrub, small tree. So that's going to give me a bit of height and a bit of screening. And also that will blossom in springtime. Then it has a beautiful leaf in summertime, and then in autumn you get this lovely rusty dark coloured leaf on it. It's really nice. It is deciduous though, so it will lose its leaves before it comes back again. I also had another hydrangea that I popped in there. Like, it's not hydrangea Annabelle, I can't remember the name, but it's the hydrangea that changes colour. So it'll be cream and then it changes to red. Can't think of the name off the top of my head. And I also popped in things like a ridgeron just to spill over. I put my sweet peas in here. I made like little teepees with some bamboo canes. I popped in a couple of foxgloves as well for some height. And I also kept some gaps because later on then in the season, because this was a new flower bed, I left a few gaps so I could do some helenium, some sunflowers, some rudbeckia, so I could add in that late summer colour then as well. And looking back at the footage, it actually looks really well, and it's really nice to keep not even a video diary, but if you take some pictures often when you're in your own garden, it's actually really nice to look back on, because I think sometimes we can be quite hard on ourselves. So this year, even when I sat down to put this footage together, I was thinking to myself, God, I haven't done much in the garden this year. This is going to be a crap video. And then I actually looked at the things and I was like, actually, I think I did all right. So this was my favourite kind of, I suppose, transformation in the garden this year, because my living room is in the front of the house. There's also a bedroom at the front. I'm in like a bungalow cottage. So it means when you look out the front, I now have this other garden space and another space to work on, and I didn't have that space before. So yeah, I think it was like one of my favourite projects in the garden this year. And even when I drive home and I pull in, it just makes me smile. Now it's gone to crap now. I mean, everything is, gone to seed and whatever, but seeing this footage makes me so excited and hopeful for the coming springtime. Now we're in the height of summer. Well, we're probably in about early June now. And something I really needed to do was to tackle the barrels and the pots that's also in the front garden. So last year, this is all I had flower wise in the front. I do have a side border that has like some roses and some perennials in them. But I got these barrels from a salvage yard last year and they were really good value. I think they were 2 for €50. And they're like nice and deep, so you can do a really nice planted display in them. But they had gone just kind of weedy and a few things I had lost over winter. So they just needed a refresh. One of my favourite flowers for spilling over the edge of like a container or a basket is a bacopa. And I had a really good year this year because there was a lot of rain and they do like a lot of water. So if you have a bacopa and it has stopped flowering, just give it a good soak and a good drink. And in a couple of days, you'll see it flowering again. So I picked up a few bits from the garden centre. Again, I was inspired by all the lovely flower shows that do be on in summertime, and I wanted to just do a bit of a pot display. Now this year, something I've noticed as well, I have too many pots. You'll see later on I did a bit of a clean up as well in front of the greenhouse. I also had some stuff on the laneway at the side of the house as well. This is the start of the year where I started to feel overwhelm and I felt really behind on things. I felt like there was just so many pots full of weeds. It just felt overwhelmed when I was walking in and things just weren't looking as nice. Like the new front border were starting to look nice, but this just looked a bit weedy and forgotten about. So it took me a morning to pot up these pots and make them look pretty and tidy up this display. Something I love about this display is there is a bedroom in the front of the house, and when you look out it's like you have, I don't know, I had like some chairs in the back garden and I decided to use them almost as risers or staging so that I could sit some pots of roses on them. So when you look out the window you just see some flowers, so you see the tips of the roses and there is some catmint and some salvia as well. So again, I just wanted to have some flowers that looks a bit whimsical. So I added a bit of height, but not blocking light kind of height, just things that you could kind of see through. And again, very cottagey kind of plants, lots of flowers. Another plant that I fell in love with this year was Alchemilla mollis. I hope I'm saying that correctly. That is a lovely one for a container as well, because you have lovely foliage, so that will give you a bit of fullness. But then you have this lovely tall stemmed flower on it. And it's just a nice little companion plant in a container. So it gives you that foliage and fullness. I also fell in love this year with Senecio. I think I'm saying that right as well. Also known as angel wings. Now what I will say is the slugs did kind of give it a munch. But I found that if I gave the containers some feed and the plant was strong, it did recover quickly, but I was having to keep an eye on it to be like, what are the slugs doing? I did catch a few munching on it. It's that time of year where I need to clean the greenhouse. I was caught with an extortionate amount to have it cleaned, so I decided to clean it myself. So I've mastered a bit of a technique. I start by dampening the glass, good old washing up liquid, give it a scrub with a brush, rinse it off, and then I have my good old extendable squeegee. If I don't dilly-dally, this would probably take me an hour. This time of year I find after all of the trees have flowered, there's be this film of like pollen and grime, so I need to scrub it. If I use something like a power hose, it's even messier. I thought it was being really clever stealing this brush off my brother. It's one of these brushes where you can actually attach a hose to it. I think it's for cleaning cars, but I didn't have the hose attachment. I have seen these in any of the DIY shops. They're normally with the power washers. I think people use them to clean cars. So anyway, it's looking clean. Now, if you love some satisfying cleaning up and if you have lots of weedy pots, you are not alone. I was the queen of the weedy pots this year. So this was the turn where the garden goes from all those late spring kind of bulbs, May time. And there's that bit of a lull between, well, I find sometimes there can be a lull between mid-May to mid-June. Just before that, the high summer kind of plants start kicking off and flowering. Also, you may have noticed that the grass recovered, so I did have to do a lot of seed sowing in the grass, but you will see from the start of the video when it was pure mud, awful, it did recover nicely and it's not as bad as it was at the start of the video. Outside the greenhouse in spring, I had loads up pots with bulbs in them, and they now have some wildflower seed on top. But there was lots of old foliage and lots of weeds. Lots of weeds. I was definitely behind with trying to keep on top of self-seeders and the weeds. I also had way too many pots in the front. And also, just for anyone who's new, last year and at the start of this year, I was doing like a garden segment on the telly, which is why I ended up with so many random pots, because a lot of those were used for display. And like I said earlier in the video, I have nowhere to kind of store things and hide things. I don't have like, a garage or even a little section behind the shed to kind of hide things. But anyway, I decided today was the day where I was going to get stuck in and just move everything around, blow the last of the leaves. I find just around the greenhouse I have some space so that I can walk around and clean it, but this can gather some leaves. So they were sitting there since winter time, so I just blew everything out and then just swept and tidied and rejigged the pots and put any of the things that wasn't working into compost and just generally cleaned the space outside the greenhouse. Again, like I was saying, I think I have too many pots. I've realised my problem this year. Hello, my name is Catherine and I have way too many pots. So I think I need to simplify it maybe in 2025. So just have, I don't know, I might get some things that I can add some height and do a nice, staging. But to be honest, trying to keep on top of it was just, I think, too much for me this year. But if you have a messy corner, don't worry. It's satisfying watching it go from messy to tidy. And you do feel great after you get this. Is it like, I don't know, a feeling of proud when it's all tidy in the end? I would love to know, what was your garden struggle this year? And if you're new, we have a lovely community of people, so don't feel afraid to comment below in the comment section. If you have any questions in the garden, it's a nice place to just leave a comment and other people will reply and stuff. I know sometimes comment sections on videos can be, a bit the internet, ladies and gentlemen, but what I will say is there is a lovely community here, and thank you to all of the regular viewers who comment weekly on the videos. So if you're new and you're enjoying this video so far, hit subscribe and follow along for the journey in 2025. And do let me know whether you're a regular viewer or you haven't been here in a while or you're new. What was your garden woe this year? You can let me know in the comment section. And also, I love hearing where people are watching from as well, because it's such a global thing, YouTube is, and seeing people coming from different corners of the earth and sharing their garden dilemmas. And yeah, it's just really eye-opening for me as well. Like even when people say, they're in snow or they have extreme heat, all of the different garden struggles that people face all over the globe. So yeah, do say hello below. greenhouse. In the past couple of years, the greenhouse has become a bit of the it item for the garden, and I don't think that expensive things should be bought just for the sake of having, if that makes sense, you know, like a handbag or whatever. I think if you want a greenhouse, you're into growing, or you want that extra space in the garden, absolutely. But I have noticed some fellow YouTubers, larger accounts, have these absolutely stunning greenhouses. We've got the Hartley Botanics, we've got the Alitex. In my greenhouse, while it was still expensive to me, it was a fraction of what those larger greenhouses would be. I got my greenhouse back in 2021 and I absolutely love it. But I wanted to share, I suppose, the reality of maintaining it, because most of you guys who are watching, you are your own head gardener. And I think I remember saying this in a previous video back in autumn. I got quoted a crazy price to get someone to come and clean this. So I have perfected my own way of cleaning this to get it nice and clean and try and do it as quick as I can. Like most people, I will probably clean my greenhouse on my day off, or in an evening when I've come back from doing work. So I want to clean it as quick as I can because it's not the most fun job. So here's what I've learned over the years. Why not use a power washer? So you'll notice that there's a film of grime on the greenhouse, and this happens in summertime because there are trees around it and they flower, and when they have finished flowering, there does be this, yeah, it's like a grime, like pollen, and you'll see bits of flowers as well and things that have fallen. So I'll wait until that tree has finished doing what it's doing, and then I'll clean it. I find power washing, the water bounces off the glass, and that is toughened horticultural glass. It's not as strong as the glass in your windows. Like, it can take a football being bounced off it, but it would crack. When I use a power washer in the past, it has just been an absolute mess. I have gotten soaking, and it doesn't get as much of the grime off, and it just wastes a load of water. So my technique that has been working for me. So I am dampening the glass, tiny bit of water on it. Then I'm using good old washing up liquid. The little scrubbing brush that you'll see me using, I actually stole that off my brother. It's for cleaning cars, and you can attach your hose to it. But I forgot to steal the connector off his hose. So there's a special connector that goes onto so you can stick your hose to it. And I forgot to steal that too, because I was hoping that would, be handy. Sometimes I'll use like a normal sweeping brush. Give it a scrub. Then I'll rinse off some of the suds, and then I'll use my extendable squeegee, which I love. And halfway through this video, I broke it and I was devastated. But anyway, I use the squeegee to get all of that water off, because it will, if I don't get it all off, it can dry a bit streaky, not squeaky. And I also heard that using like tap water, there's obviously like lime scale and stuff in it. So people don't recommend using tap water on your windows. Apparently it can leave a film over time. I've heard that. That's pretty much my technique. Another technique I've used in the past is a bucket of hot water, and I pop in washing up liquid, bit of vinegar, and same technique of just scrubbing the glass of the grime and then using my squeegee. I did that back in autumn time because the ground was quite damp. And I found with the hose and stuff, I was just creating even more puddles. Anyone who's a regular viewer will know how wrecked my grass got last winter from walking on it. I had all these bald patches in my grass back in March, April. Thankfully, they have all healed. I re-sowed seed, excuse me, and they're looking good. When it comes to the frequency of how often I have to clean the greenhouse, it's not actually too bad. I would say twice a year. So I do the summer clean that you'll see now because of that pollen layer from the trees. And then, depending on the weather and my mood, I like to do one around about like December, January time. Depending on the storms that we've had, I find when there's storms and heavy rain, the windows, sure you know from your own house, the windows get that lovely stormy film of debris. So I might give it a clean. It depends when I'm looking out the window if I'm like, oh, that is looking awful. And my winter motivation. Another little tip as well, if you have a wooden structure in your garden, you'll notice that power washing will not remove the algae. I swear by a product called Algon. Algon. It's like a vinegary type solution. I bought it from that guy in Cavan, Pelargoni. Oh, I kind of think Pergola Nurseries. That's it, not Pelargonium. That is the name of the plant. Pergola Nurseries in Cavan. I'm sure you can pick it up online as well. You spray that onto whatever it is where you want to remove algae from. So the green film that you get on things. And then as it rains over the course of a couple of weeks, it just goes. So just a little tip for anyone who maybe has a similar wooden structure or shed and they want to remove it. You can also remove it with vinegar yourself, but I just find this solution is so handy. And now let's tackle the inside. And I wanted to, I suppose, have a chat, share the reality of the cleaning that happens on the inside. But myself and Mary Staunton, we were on the Today Show with Claire Byrne, I think 2 weeks ago now, and we were talking about greenhouses. And if you head to Mary Staunton's Instagram page, you'll see her beautiful greenhouse. She has the one that is brick on the bottom and then it has like a white frame on top, and herself and her husband built them greenhouses themselves. But we were chatting about, the difference between sun houses and sunrooms and garden rooms versus greenhouses. So there might be some people who want to have that space in the garden, but they don't know they're kind of confused between the two. So a greenhouse is optimized to let in as much light as it can, perfect growing conditions. It's also optimized to be warm so you can grow for longer, so you can start your seeds in spring and even grow stuff into autumn. So it's optimized for growing. However, you can have it, I suppose, like myself, like a dual space. So in springtime, the greenhouse is all down to business. It is seed sowing. And then in summertime, like now, I can use it. Sometimes I'll work in it. You'll see that I set up my art easel, and it's great in the Irish weather evenings. If you have friends over and it starts raining or it's a bit chilly, you can chill in the greenhouse. And then come winter time, the greenhouse is really handy because you can overwinter any tender plants, which is what I do. So a sunroom is pretty much optimized for your leisure. So greenhouses, you're gonna have a lot of cobwebs and spiders. I have a window actually in the greenhouse that opens automatically. I think it works on there's like an arm, and with the heat, I think there's wax on it and it expands and the window opens. And then when it gets cooler in the evening, it contracts and the window closes. So you're naturally going to get cobwebs and bugs in your greenhouse. You might even get snails and slugs too. And when it comes to like a sunroom or a summer house in your garden, they're optimized for your leisure, your pleasure. So they may not get as hot because the whole thing isn't going to be made of glass. It will have windows. It's going to probably be a bit more airtight and watertight. Whereas greenhouses, they're never 100% air and watertight because naturally you have like airflow in them. So I think if you're into your growing, then a greenhouse is going to be suitable for you. You will have, I suppose, a bit more maintenance because you do have to clean it a bit more, especially the inside with the cobwebs this time of year. And then your sun house, you will be able to, I suppose, enjoy it all year round. Maybe not so much in winter, but you could install maybe a little stove or something. But if you are into growing seeds and stuff, you may not have as much light in your summer house to grow. So like everything, it's going to come down to what your needs are, and it's not going to be the same for everyone, and it's your space. So pick something that suits you and not everyone else. So I have noticed that, having the greenhouse in the garden has become a bit of a trendy item. I don't really like getting something for the sake, of a trend, especially when they are pricey. So while you might see the greenhouse looking pretty on an Instagram reel, here is the reality of that maintenance and keeping it looking fresh. But it is satisfying once it's clean. Granted, it is quite messy this time of year because I'm transitioning from it being my seed house to it now being a pretty house for a few weeks before around about November time it starts to get full again with pots of dahlias and anything that isn't frost hardy. This spring, I had a little experiment at a DIY no-dig mini meadow. I had some leftover cardboard and soil. I laid this down on a patch on my grass, sprinkled some native wildflower mix onto it, and this is what it's looking like at the moment. It did take a while to germinate, and to be honest, this would have grown better had I have turned the soil over. That was a lot of effort, and I wanted to see if I could do a no-dig method. My grass already has lots of clover in it. I have to say, I am loving the pop of red from the poppies. So this is the messy area that I need and would love, I have been meaning to do this for ages, is to tackle this dry shady corner. Now this did look lovely in spring going into early summer, but then it gets really dry here because of the trees above it, even with all the rain that we've been having. So I need to redo and adapt to this area. But the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to clip back some ivy. There is clematis growing through the ivy. So if you see here, this is clematis winter beauty, and it's growing through it, which is lovely. But I'm going to trim. I do like ivy, and it's quite good for the bees this time of year when it gives off a flower. However, I'm going to trim it, pull up all the little self-seeders, and I'm going to just clip back, take stock of this area. All of these pots just have self-seeded trees in them. I think I'm just going to get rid of pots from this area because it's a really shaded spot. Keep it clean. Use the pots there in the back or in the front. The bag of mulch, good old bag of mulch, and a bag of horse poop. I'm going to put the horse poop on the roses, and I might mix some of it into the soil here, and I'm going to mulch this area here after I tidy it, so then at least it's ready for planting. But I don't want to go to the garden centre until, I don't know, I research what I'm going to put in here that will be suitable for a bit of dry shade. But then I need to remember that in winter the trees above it are all deciduous, so they're going to lose their leaves, so it's a bit more exposed in winter. So if we get another wet winter, I have to think of, is it going to get absolutely soaked and drenched in winter? They mightn't like it, and then in summer they're going to be dehydrated. Obviously I can water them, have the good old hose. I don't use irrigation systems because I'm like, listen, we need to just plant for survival. Heucheras do well here, so I think I might do what I did in the other shady corner down the back. So Brunner Jack Frost, something for a bit of height, just try and keep it a bit simple. A few little woodland bulbs for spring, and then once it goes towards this end, this has way more flowers because it's in like full sun. So there's roses doing well, hydrangea Annabelle, everything does a bit better. But I need to just tidy up this lovely climber. I just need to basically tidy up this shitty section, excuse my language, and then I need to tidy up all these random pots. I need to tidy this laneway, and just make it look a bit more tidy. I want to share my gardening trick. I'm not even going to call it a hack. If you're like me and you have an area that is looking a bit shabby, it's not looking too fresh, and you want to instantly or within a few hours make it look better, this is my trick. The first thing I do is I will pull up any weeds that I can see. The only thing that's kind of weedy in this section is I get some self-seeding trees from above, and that's because I just leave the leaves to like mulch, so the little seedlings get trapped and then they seed. Because the soil is dry in this section, they're really easy to pull up, and most of them don't survive here. So I pull up the weeds. Then I go and disguise the soil that's looking a bit messy. You can see that I mulched it with some leaf clippings and it looks a bit messy. So I am going to get some fine bark mulch that I normally buy a ton of it in the spring, and it would only take me a week or two to shovel it. It has taken me 9 months this year. So I have some mulch left over in the bag, and straight away if you put down bark in an area that you've just planted, it's going to look instantly tidier and like a million times better. Like you can see I haven't planted anything in this area, and it is going to look tidy, fresh. So I think if you can clear a pathway, take some weeds out, a little bit of trimming, like this could be a little Sunday afternoon job, But that's my trick for making something look instantly better. So if you have any, I don't know, autumn parties in the garden and you need to make it look nice, that is my trick. Mulch, weed, then mulch, a sweep, and you're good to go. As I'm going through this section as well, I'm just making a note of what plants that I have and which ones that I would like to move. As the soil is a bit dry now, I'm not going to move anything, just to give everything a better chance to settle in. I'm going to wait till about late September, early October. October is a great time to move things in the garden because they'll settle in over winter. They're going to get more water to let the roots settle in. You can also move things in springtime, but I find autumn is a good time. And there's not much, aside from planting some bulbs, there's not too much to do. So I'm going to make a note of what is here that I want to move, and then I'll be able to be like, okay, what space have I got? And normally I go straight to the garden centre and want to just buy something. So I think I'm going to give myself the pleasure of pause and actually research something that can go in here that is going to last and is going to deal with the conditions that are in this space. So I'm not going to go through the cycle of killing things and having to plant something new. But I think all good gardeners go through that cycle. And there is the excitement of going to the garden centre and buying something. But I'm going to research what will go in here. I feel like the shady corner that's in the back garden, it's done really well with the likes of the brunneries. There's a couple of ferns doing well there. So I'm going to plan the planting in this section. And I'm going to pause, do some research before I get excited and go to the garden centre. The past few years in the garden, I feel like I have been giving to it, as in putting plants in, sowing seeds, getting it going. And I feel like in some sections I'm at the stage where I'm having to take from it. So certain things are doing better than others. Some things are doing really well, like that climber who was literally climbing all over that rose. And I need to not thin out, that's not the word, but you have some perennials that have grown bigger, and then you lose some plants underneath because the light is getting blocked. And I feel like there's always something to learn, and some plant might not be working well, lighting changes, trees growing above causing more shade. So I feel like this season I have been clipping back a bit more. I know I planted up the front garden back early summer. I had some raised beds and that's really fun to do. But I feel like in the sections that are a bit older in the garden, I am finding I'm having to prune a bit more. So gardening has been less planting and more, I don't know, maintaining. I know they're not as fun of a job because it's always fun planting and going to the garden centre and you have new plants. However, realistically, a lot of gardening is clipping back, pruning, tidying up, keeping on top of it. And I feel like they're the jobs that, give the most impact, and, we need to do them. I just had to pause and hide in the doorway for a minute because there is a lovely rain shower, which is quite welcome when you have been shoveling mulch. I am sweating, but straight away it looks much tidier, even though we have a bit of a plant graveyard situation. But at least I have a nice clean starting point when I figure out what I'm going to put in here. I'm thinking something evergreen shrub in here for the bit of height, something nice, and then ground cover, which will probably be Brunnera, Jack Frost, because it has a lovely like, I don't think it's called evergreen, but in my garden it only loses its leaf in January and then it grows back quite quick, and come like April it's in flower and it has foliage then until January. Like, it has foliage in winter. This section looks a bit tidy. I have to get back to sweeping, but I'll have to wait until that shower decides to leave. So, something I have discovered, which is probably not news to my regular viewers, is I have way too many pots. I probably have a bit of a pot problem, and I've decided that less is more, especially when it comes to this particular laneway, because now that it's pretty much mostly shade, a lot of things in the pots are just dying. I forget to water them, and the thing, if I put like pansies or little annuals in them, because they're not getting much sun, they don't really do well there. So I've decided to just get rid of the pots from here. I'm going to empty them, and I'm going to have to take stock of my pots. I do have some extra pots, so you would have seen I did like a pot display in the front back in summer. And I had some pots because I was using them as like telly display pots, which was quite handy to have. But that has resulted in me just having way too many of them. So I need to take stock. And I think I need to, I don't know, I think I need to keep the really, really good ones, clean them up, and they can be in front of the greenhouse in those areas. And then the ones that are, I don't know, not as nice, either see if they need to be recycled or I can give them away or donate them. I don't know where I do be going with all of these pots. Um, the maintenance on pots as well, it's so much easier when you have a plant in the soil in a border, because you can mulch it, Mother Nature waters it. You may have to step in every now and again, but pots, there's way more maintenance in them because you have to feed them once a week, well, during summer anyway, and you have to make, they dry out quicker, so you have to make sure you keep on top with your watering as well, especially if they're a smaller size pot. So yes, I do have a pot problem, but I am trying to keep it under control. So this laneway, I am just going for less is more. Keep it clear of clutter. Let the plants do the talking, and yeah, not try and trip up the postman or the parcel delivery man with all of these pots and random things on the ground. And I think clearing it of all of the clutter and junk instantly just makes it look way much better, cleaner, tidier, calmer as well. For the members of our community who love a bit of ASMR, here is some 3 minutes of uninterrupted satisfying cleaning. In a previous video I did do a bit more of this, however most of the community said that they do enjoy the voiceover, so I'm going to go with the majority and keep the voiceovers. However, here's some 3 minutes of cleaning for you. So straight away, this is much tidier, cleaner. Oh, a bit of mulch. I forgot how much I love a bit of mulching. I'm going to text Karen now because she just slagged me for mulching, but it is instant serotonin. But I know the path here is a bit dirty from all the pots, but looks much tidier. And I even did the laneway here. The only thing I have left is these are my garden centre buckets. So when I go to the garden centre, I just put them in the back of my car. So they're just there for the minute. But all of the other bits are gone. This is all clear. The leaves were actually kind of clogging drainways. So leaves were getting stuck around pots and they were clogging some of the drains. So that's not good. Now, this would be a satisfying before and after power washing. But leave it with me because I gave a lend of the power washer. My OGs will know I stole that power washer in 2020 from my brother. So technically I was just giving it back. So I'm going to have to go steal it again off him. But I think, yeah, if it just had a little power wash, it would be very satisfying. But all of these kind of areas and like the algae and stuff. But listen, the thing of mulch, the bag of mulch that has been there for 6 months or more, probably 9 months at this stage, someone could have had a child in the length of time that was there, is now gone. The sunshine has come out. Everything looks better in the sunshine. This is relatively tidy. I am going to have to do a proper cutback on this, but not today because all my compost things are full. But this is all lovely and tidy. And now I can kind of get my thinking cap on and see what I'm going to plant in here. Soil is a bit dry, even though there's a few rain showers. So I'm thinking maybe end of September, which gives me some time to plan. So yeah, once the soil moistens up a bit, plant them for autumn, and then they should be thriving next year. So here is this angle. Much better than this morning, don't you agree? And this, even though there's only a few things left in it, looks much tidier than what it did this morning. So this took me a couple of hours, but it was, I don't know, one of those satisfying jobs, you know, when you're just sweeping, weeding, doing all them things. I do have 3 Canopias in there, but I'm not going to transplant them to the front until soil moistens up a bit, and then I'll do it maybe late September, early October. I'll take out the things that aren't working so that they'll have a better chance of settling into the soil then if I move them when the soil isn't as dry. Wait for it to dampen up a bit. So yeah, I think I am going to keep, once I clean the pot, just keep this simple. I don't need to have loads of pots here, and then have lovely planting here, and then that way nothing is taken away from it. You'll just see a lovely little garden here, a nice dry shade friendly garden, and then this will all just be clean. I need to go get that power washer. I have just, Toffee must have heard me talking, so he's here to inspect my work. Toffee also loves a bit of mulch because it gives him a nice even place for a bed. Oh, there's a lot of bugs actually on the ground, so I think Toffee's having a little scratch. So yeah, Toffee actually sleeps further up in the bed in the morning because it's a sunny spot. But I don't know, maybe that would be a nice shady alternative for him. I don't know if you can see, I absolutely forgot about my potatoes. Forgot to water them, let them just, they didn't flower, they grew foliage. This is what was left in the soil. So I better bring them in from the sun before they go green. I'm after borrowing. I have borrowed my brother's power washer. I do have to return it. I stole it from his garage. It's actually a good one, because I was like, I'm not buying one because I only need it for like this stuff. So fingers crossed this works, and let's do some satisfying power washing. I could sit and watch videos of people power washing things until the cows come home. I don't know what it is. It's just so satisfying. Now, I always have, it's probably to do with the lack of light in winter time and just the dampness of Ireland, but I always get like a film of algae and grime in this laneway. Over the years, I've had suggestions from people like, why don't I just paint it? If I paint it like black, but to be honest, it's always going to need to be cleaned, and it would, if whatever you use is probably going to lift the paint. So while it's not the prettiest, I think if I'm still waiting to win that lotto so I can buy the tiles that I want. But anyway, I feel like this would be beautiful with a nice little brick on it if, money was no object. For now, it is the good old power washer just to make it look a little bit decent. You can get detergents and cleaning solutions that you can put on the pat to make it easier when you do go to do a bit of power washing. Because I have a lot of visitors in my garden, whether it's neighbours' cats, hedgehogs, I have loads of birds. I also have loads of slugs and snails. This is the M50. This is the motorway for slugs and snails in my garden, this little hotspot. So I don't bother using any detergents because I don't know kind of what's in them, and I don't want to harm all of my little pals in the garden. I haven't actually washed this pat. I think the last time we did it on the channel was like 2021. So it's long overdue a bit of power washing. There is a solution that I use on my greenhouse and it's called Algon. I used it last year on the channel on the wood on my raised beds. It's kind of like it's an organic solution. I think it's mostly vinegar that's in it. It's like a vinegar solution. It smells very vinegary. It's called Algon, and you can stick that on paths, driveways, wood, sheds, if you do have algae that you want to just naturally get rid of it. It does take a little bit longer. Obviously, power washing is quite quick. But yeah, if you are looking for a natural alternative, see if you can pick that up. I got mine from Pergola Nurseries in Cavan. I got it delivered, but I'm sure you can pick it up on the likes of Amazon as well. Here is how it is looking, much cleaner than what it was at the start of this video. If you're new, don't forget to hit the subscribe button, and for my regular viewers, let me know your planting suggestions in the comment section, and keep an eye out for later in the season when you can see what I actually put in this space and bring it back to life. In the last garden video, you would have saw I had a very satisfying deep clean of the laneway, and I got rid of loads of pots. Well, when I say got rid of them, I just took them out of the laneway space and they were just dumped in the back garden. Now I need to empty them out and clean them up. So the plants that were in them, they are dead, they are gone. Because I had let the pots just dry out and go to weed, and there was some self-seeding trees in them and weeds, everything in them is dead. So the soil is probably not in good condition. So what I normally do is when I have old pots that I need to empty out, I will empty it all into the wheelbarrow, see if there's anything in it, if there's anything salvageable, and then I will bring that soil over to underneath the tree. I have like a wild little shady corner. Hedgehog likes to rest over there whenever he does visit, so I'll just dump any used soil over there. The area underneath the tree has actually done surprisingly well this year because I have done absolutely nothing to it. Brunneries have grown really well. There is some ferns. I think I just lost a couple of astilbes, but I got them out of the bargain basement last year, so I don't feel too bad about that one. Normally I mulch this area. I did mulch it with leaf clippings kind of throughout the year, and sometimes if the compost heap is full, I'll just throw the grass clippings to use as a mulch. So it seems to be working, just throwing the random stuff that I have. Random bits of soil, random bits of mulch. Seems to be helping this little corner underneath the tree. I absolutely love these pots. They're giving very French cottage farmhouse vibe. I cannot for the life of me remember where I got them from, but I didn't upcycle them or anything. I bought them like this, and it's a good couple of years ago from one of the garden centres. I think it might have been Johnstown where I got them. There's no labels or anything on them, but they do look like something that you'd find maybe in a salvage yard if you got one of those old, what is it, the milk churn, is that what it's called? Things like that. So because a lot of these pots have been houses for dead plants, I'm going to give them a good clean. It's not my favourite thing, cleaning pots, and it's very tempting for me to just put new soil in them and plant something, but that is how bacteria and disease is spread. So if there was a plant in here that had a disease or anything like that, it's good practice to clean them, even though it's my least favourite of tasks. Okay, my next job I need to do is I need to tackle this area that has become quite overgrown. There is magnolia tree, loads of new growth are all around this year, looking good. I have this evergreen lilac thingy that needs to be just pruned back, get some air circulating. There's a rambling rose rambling on the ground, which is not where I want it. That has to be pinned into the fence. Aquilegia seed heads, but then when you get over here, it is more chaotic. So this is where I just let a patch of grass grow, but this geranium, which I absolutely love, has grown into the pond, and it's basically eaten the pond. The bird bath is not, there's no water in it, it's filthy, that needs to be cleaned. And then there's all these grasses and overgrown stuff in the back. Now, as you can see, this geranium is full of bees, so I don't think I'm going to touch it just yet, but I'm going to take out all these dead grasses from the pond and assess the pond situation. I don't even know if there even is a pond in here, but I can definitely see some creeping buttercup is after getting in, and yeah, like you can't even walk through this, but I need to be careful There's loads of bees on it and I don't want to interrupt them, but when you go over this side you'll see a lot of the planting that was around the edges is dead, has been eaten. When I look into the actual pond, I can just see the roots of the pond is underneath this. So yeah, bit of a pond fail. The garden has eaten the pond. So I'm going to see if I can cut back a section and try and reclaim a bit of order here, because yeah, it is a bit chaotic. So in this flower bed, there's 3 plants that are intertwined, tangled through each other. The first one is I have a rambling rose that I did not realise how much new growth it has gotten this year. So there has been an upside to all that lovely rain we've been having here in Ireland. The trees are looking lush, shrubs are loving it, everything has got a lot of growth. So I had to add string to the fence so that I could tie in the rambling rose, because I want that to grow along the fence. So there's enough stems on it. I want it to go to the left of the fence and then to the right of the fence, so that I will see the lovely blooms on the fence in springtime or summertime. Can't remember the name of this rambling rose, but it is scented and it has a lovely kind of deep red purpley kind of flower on it, and it has like clusters of flowers, and it started flowering I think early June, and there is still some flowers on it. I'm going to leave the ones that are left to just turn into rose hips. Once the rose was sorted and that wasn't kind of growing through things, I could then just clip back the lilac, and I wanted to just open up some space to let some air in. I needed to also assess what weeds have been growing, and I also have lost plants. So because these other plants have naturally grown big, it has blocked the light from some perennials. There used to be a lovely white verbena in here, that's gone. I also had verbena borendi, you know, the tall purple verbena. It begins with a B. I've lost 2 of those, and it's because there is creeping buttercup going along, getting in from the grass, and it's getting into the bed, so I need to weed all of that out. So I wouldn't say that this section is a bit of a fail. I just think that things are thriving, but I needed to check in maybe a bit sooner, because I could have dug up the perennials and moved them somewhere instead of letting them die. The Californian lilac that you see, I actually got that in Lidl back in 2020 for like bargain bin. I swear it was like €1 or €2. I had it in the front garden, the front border, and it did not like it at all. And I moved it, I think, the year before last, and it is thriving. But my goal is I want to clip it into almost like a tree. What I love about this is it's got lovely evergreen foliage, and this does be buzzing when it flowers. There's beautiful little purpley lilac-y flowers on it, and it does be humming with bees and insects. I wanted to just give the magnolia tree and this bush some space, and as it's kind of growing, I'm just going to clip it and shape it. But I do like that it gives me some evergreen colour. And right on cue, the robin and the blackbird popped into the garden, because anytime I cut the grass, weed something, potter about, they are straight down to see what juicy worms have been left in the soil for them. Now, in this section, I do have some self-seeded Aquilegia. I love the Aquilegia in here when it's flowering around about May time. And I just clip back some of the seed heads. It does really well in here. I just shook some seeds, and I have loads of self-seeded Aquilegia in the garden. It's popping up in random places. Some people might say it's starting to look a bit weedy, but I love it. Sadly, I did have some mint in a pot. Oh, mint. Do not allow mint into the ground, because it is one thug. That's why a lot of people will keep it in a pot. I have some that seeded into this border, and like that the mint killed the verbena that was here. So I'm going to pull it out by the root, and hopefully I've gotten most of it. I love mint, but I just don't want it in the border because it will quickly take over. It's kind of like when you have nettles in a section, it will just run rife. If you have an area for it where you can let it do that and give it a big space, It looks amazing, but not when I have lots of other plants in this area. I also have creeping buttercup, which in this area of the garden is where I have the most creeping buttercup. It's because I let that section grow wild, my little wild patch, and the geranium kind of keeps it in check. But that is the bane of my life in this corner. And again, I just pull it up by the hand. Again with the rain we've been having, it has been thriving. So I just have to get in and do a good weeding. Like, this took me about an hour, and it was quite satisfying to see it all kind of cleared out. I didn't have any mulch left. If you saw the last garden video, my trick for when you have a messy corner is a bit of weeding, throw a bit of mulch on, and it looks really clean. But I used up all of my mulch last week. I would love to know, share in the comment section, what is your weed of choice? Well, maybe not of choice, but what is the one thing in your garden, the weed that annoys you the most? Thankfully, I'm very lucky. I don't have things like bindweed. For me, it is the self-seeding trees, because they just fall into my garden every year and I'm having to pull them up. So the self-seeding trees and the creeping buttercup. But I don't mind the creeping buttercup in the grass. I just don't want to go into the borders where my pretty plants are. I would say that they are my two pet peeves in the garden. I don't really mind anything else. I do get some dandelion ones, but I suppose, yeah, dandelions as well. But because I mulch a lot, I don't get as much as them. But even with mulching, that creeping buttercup likes to just get in. I find this time of year the compost heap is just getting huge. I feel like this time of year in the garden, it's a lot of kind of pruning and clipping back. I was saying that in the last garden video, that I feel like I'm doing a lot more of that in this year than in previous years, just because things are starting to kind of mature a bit and get a bit big, a bit wild. They're starting to compete with each other, and I'm having to, okay, step in and see what plants I have lost. Like in this border, I remember a couple of years back, if you go back to older videos, when this was literally just, it was just a patch of grass. There was no pond. There was nothing here. And I remember I put in lupins. Now, I relearned the lesson that lupins in my garden are just a no, because the slugs eat them. And I've noticed that instead of lupins, if I do foxgloves, so the slugs don't bother my foxgloves. But I did buy a lupin, and I had it in the pot in the front when I did the little pot display. That lupin was massacred. Absolutely, it was sacrificial. The slugs, there's not a leaf left on it. There was just a trail of slime and a seed head left on top. So at least they left me the seed head. I could maybe grow some more. But I remember I had 4 lupins in here when this was just getting going. The magnolia tree was planted and it was just a twig. Those lupins never came back. They're gone. There was a geranium in here, but the pink one competed with it. So that's the king. So yeah, I have lost a couple of little plants along the years off this. So I need to, as things are getting mature and growing, just assess, what can I put in here? Because like that, if the shrubs and stuff are gonna block the light, yeah, I need to get the gardening books out. I need to have a look and see what Monty Don is doing in his. One of my favourite things to do is look at the birds, having a little bath. I just realised in the past few days, it has been empty. Like, while it has been raining, I find this time of year things are just drying out and you gotta step in. Can't rely on the rain, even with all of the rain we've been having. So I needed to clean the bird baths out because I can see them now from the kitchen window. Now that I clip back that lilac, I can actually see the bird bath again from the window. So I get to enjoy them. So I need to keep on top of keeping it clean for them. So now onto the pond, and yes, There is a pond in here that a couple of years ago, my brothers, they dug it out for me. We put in one of those pond shape bucket thingies. Looks like a little bathtub. And I put pond grass, there's iris in it, there was pond grasses, and there was a lily in it as well. But this year, I just don't know what happened. I didn't tend to this corner, and it's like it has dried up. There is still water in it, but it's like the grasses kind of absorbed all the water. Debris fell in, so there is some leaves and mud. I don't know how the debris got in, like if it was from trees or if it was blown in, but there is a lot in it, especially compared to previous years. Like last year, this was very wildlifey. It had like the pond grasses were green and healthy and tall. There was lots of little pond snails. It was starting to look like a proper little wildlife corner. And this year, like it happened quite quickly, or else I just wasn't paying attention. It just was eaten up by the garden, so I couldn't see any pond snails left in it. It was much drier, and there's just lots of dead kind of garden waste in it, and I don't know how it got in there. So I think the grasses were dying off, and that kind of bulked it up. And I think with the geranium starting to grow over it, that was blocking any water and rain from getting in. So yeah, I have had a absolute fail with the pond, and I'm gonna have to, first of all, I'm just cutting back all of that grass that is just dead now, and then I will have to assess the damage. So when the flower goes over on this geranium, I'm going to cut it right back, and I'll have to literally cut out the pond again, remove all of the dead pond grasses and debris, and start from scratch. So it looks like what happened is, if I go in this way, this is the pond surround, and it looks like it dried up, but there is like debris and muck from some of the pond plants, but some fallen debris. And yeah, I don't know, I think the good old that geranium is just thriving, but the roots of the geranium are not in the pond. It's just grasses, but as you can see, it's all dried up. What I'm gonna have to do is, if I step back, I'm gonna have to cut out the pond. I'll let the bees, and this is humming with insects, so I'm not gonna do it now. And then I'll cut this out, and I'll have to start again and keep an eye on it, because it's gonna happen. I love that geranium, but it is a thug in this corner, and now I'm left with a gap here on the fence. So I think something evergreen would be nice here. But yeah, I need to, actually this is honesty that has self-seeded, so that's going to flower next year. That's self-seeded from last year, so I'm excited to have some of that, because that is a beautiful spring flower. There's loads of self-seeded Aquilegia along here as well. So yeah, there's my pond fail. I also found some of these lights, forgot about them because they have been covered in shrubbery, so I just moved them over to the raised beds. So yeah, I'm going to go rescue them. Hello and welcome to a very rainy morning in the garden. I want to tackle this shady corner that you may have seen in previous videos. And I actually got excited when I saw the rain today, because it means that the soil will be lovely and moist and easier to work with. But before I start digging up the shady water, you know what I need to do? We need to go to the garden centre. What better way to spend a rainy morning than going to visit the garden centre? I'm heading out to Ratot Garden Centre because I visited it around about early summertime. They had loads of plants. However, they have a beautiful garden just behind the actual garden centre. You can walk through it and they have this lovely garden walk. And I wanted to get some inspiration. Something that I lack in the garden is shrubs and evergreen, and that transition from when your summer plants kind of change and then they go into that early autumn, mid-autumn, winter. Something I am lacking is a little bit of evergreen, a little bit of something, something. So I wanted to see what was growing in their garden. Now, what I love about their garden is, and you don't see, so if you have been going to the flower shows this year, you'll notice that a lot of the gardens, I mean, they're brand new, they're set up for that weekend, for the show. But it's really nice to visit a garden that you can see has maturity. So there's beautiful mature trees here. A lot of the shrubs you can see are full grown. And I feel like that just isn't captured with show gardens. So while they are pretty and nice to look at during the summertime, I feel like it's nice to get out and see, gardens, whether it's, walled garden, the little garden next to a garden centre, whatever's local to you. It's nice to see something that has, I don't know, a little bit of maturity. I feel like that's something my garden lacks, aside from my borrowed landscape. So the trees the other side, I mean, they're mature, but a lot of the plants that are in my garden, they're quite young. So I feel like I'm lacking that in the garden, but that is something that only time can give me. Okay, it is, I think the rain might be easing off a little bit. Also, I'm conscious of the microphone picking up noise from my raincoat, so apologies. I do have a little plant haul, not too bad. I'll show you what I got. I'm after buying everything in trees to do nice healthy clumps of plants in this area. So I did already have ones and twos of things, so I just bought extras to bulk them up to three. So the first thing I'm after getting, because I want to add a bit of evergreen and a bit of flower, and my neighbour has one of these in their garden and it's beautiful. So I'm after getting this Viburnum Tinnis Lisa Rose. So I'm gonna bring up, let me just show you, that's the label on it there. So a Viburnum, but this is one that has lovely kind of red, I don't know if you can see that there. I think this is just gonna, it looks a bit like a skimmia, but it'll have like little pink flowers on it. So I got this to go in to, I don't think you can see me on camera. Yeah, you can see me. This is going to go here. Yeah, so it's going to give me a nice bit of green colour, bit of flower, and now that the trees have been cut, oh yeah, actually, I meant to tell you that. Since the last video, it was like 2-3 weeks ago, where I was doing the shady corner where I was tidying it up, and I was saying that the trees needed to be trimmed. I didn't think they would be done so quickly, but basically all of the trees were coming over and they were getting close to touching my roof, so I was afraid of like damage, especially in storm season. The trees have been trimmed, so this shady corner that was really shady is now semi-shady.
shade. So obviously with the light changing now, coming into winter, I've just been observing the lighting the past kind of since they've done it, and this has way more light now, and it's also going to allow the rain. It's been raining all day. This has been getting quite dry because obviously the trees were grown over, they were blocking a lot of the rain coming down. So this is now not as dry because I was looking for plants for dry shade, whereas now I have semi-shade and it's a bit more moist than what it would have been the past couple of years. So yeah, they just trimmed the branches. I'll get a shot of the branches that were trimmed, and it means I can grow more now. So it's still a shady spot, but not as bad. It's not like deep dark shade like it was. So I'm really delighted about that. And also I just asked the council to trim them because they're not private trees, so they don't belong to a private residence. The council look after that area, and they trimmed them for me, and they listened because I was afraid that they would cut down the whole tree. And I said in the email, please don't cut down the tree, I really like them and I get lots of nature, and yeah, just trim the branches that are touching the house. And they listened and they did. So back to the planting. Okay, back to my little plant haul. I'm after getting 3 anemones and elfin swan. So one of them has some flower buds on it. I've seen loads of these anemones in people's garden that are all in flower. Maybe they might flower in October, but I got ones that don't have much flower on them because, to be honest, I just want the roots to kind of settle now when we're coming into October. So I got 3 of them. Then I got, hang on, I got 2 of these hellebores because I have a third one that's already in a pot from last winter. This is winter bells, and the other one that I have, they kind of grow quite tall compared to, I have another one and it's only like 30 centimeters. This one has a bit of a taller flower on it. Hellebore is great in shade, semi-shade, and they flower for ages. And I just think when I come out my door in winter, I'll have a bit of colour from the viburnum, and then I'll have some foliage and flower from the hellebore, and I've already got some heuchera in here as well. So I got 2 of them because I do have a third one. This poor brunner looks a bit miserable considering it was in a garden centre. I already have 2 of these waiting to be planted, so I'm going to do a clump of brunner Jack Frost because hostas, the slugs, I've given up growing hostas a long time ago, but my alternative, and the slugs don't seem to eat it, is brunner Jack Frost, and I have a clump of this in the back garden underneath the tree. Love it. Lovely blue flowers in April, May time. They look like bluebells, but lovely foliage on it. So I have a clump of 3 of them. So for further up the little border where there's even more sun, I just got some sneezeweed, and I have this at the back and I love it. So I got Helenium, short and sassy. I got 3 of them for a bit of colour, but I also got 3 of this taller one because again I have it at the back. So I'm going to do a clump with the 3 short ones in front and this taller one. This is Helenium red shades, and this grows taller, so this will give me a bit of height and I can put that at the back. That's all I got. Like, that's not too bad. I do have, I got a free tree fern. I think the rain is coming back, so I may have to move my camera, but really quickly before I go, I got a free tree fern. I was out walking and I went into the walled garden on Saturday, and I just got chatting to the guy who works there. He works for the council, and he's a horticulturist, and he designs all of the lovely displays that you see in the public spaces. And anyway, I started saying about, like, I asked him if he covered his tree ferns just to see, because obviously, like, with the winters being a bit mild. Anyway, I was just talking plants, and I was saying I was doing a little shady corner, and he's like, do you want a tree fern? And I was like, absolutely. So Dixonia Antarctica. Obviously I have to take off all of the dead foliage. I'm going to stand back. So it's this size, which there's some nice foliage on top. It's not that small, but you can see obviously compared to like tree ferns are crazy expensive. Like you could spend up to 1,000 on one that's probably like just the height of me. I'm only 5 foot. Like a tree fern the size of me is a couple of hundred, if not 1,000. But you can see the little furry crown. You can see it there. So yeah, I imagine this might take a good 10 years or more to get tall. But you know what? I planted a tree 10 years ago, and like it's still quite small. I actually need to prune it, the little cherry blossom one in the front, and you don't feel the time going. Like, I probably sound like an old lady saying that, but you actually don't feel the time going. So there is the little fluffy tree fern there. So I'm going to put that in my shady border. Might put a bit further up. I'm going to keep the viburnum in that corner and put the tree fern next to the mirror. So yeah, I was delighted. I was like, see, plant people are lovely. He was saying that this was left over from a bloom display from like 2 years ago. Still in the pot. So it's going to have a little home now. It's left its plant nursery and it's got a home. And then I just have here these are 2 runners that I bought, I'm going to say June or July, and they're still not planted, but I'm going to plant them all up. I did know that I wanted to put these in the kind of shady corner, but I'm only getting around to doing it now, so that's why I bought a 3rd one, because I want to do a nice clump of them. You would have seen in the footage from that garden that I filmed that they had lovely big clumps of one particular plant. It wasn't like loads of ones mixed in together. And I think, yeah, I remember before someone, or it was actually Carol Marks from Board BA, saying when we were doing a collab, she was like planting 3s, 6s and 9s, odd numbers. So yeah, that's like a little horticulture rule, whereas before I would just plant 1s and 2s. But if you can afford to, or if you're growing from seed or taking cuttings, try and do a nice clump when you're planting, because you get, I don't know, more of an impact. So I'm going to make a cup of tea, wait for the rain to stop. I was so happy when I saw rain today, because I was like, yes, the soil is going to be lovely and moist, because obviously since the end of August it was quite dry. The end of summer, the soil was just drying up, but we've had a good bit of rain, which means it'll be easier for me to dig it and plant it. So yeah, I'm going to sort my life out, sort my plants out and get these planted.
Okay, let's get the shovel out and let's get planting. I love planting this time of year because I'm a little bit of a lazy gardener. So when you plant around about autumn time, the soil is still warm from summer. Now it will be a bit drier, which you're going to see. You know what, when I watch Gardener's World and when I see Monty Don or any of the guys digging a hole, they make it look so effortless and they always have lovely soil. Well, not me, but anyway, autumn is a great time if you want to divide up any of your geraniums, any of your perennials, if you want to move things, because the soil is warm, the roots will settle in over winter. And if you're like me, I water everything in really well when I plant it, but then I kind of pray for a little bit of rain from Mother Nature just to give me a hand. So all throughout winter, they'll get a bit of water, a bit of rain, then spring will come and hopefully we have a nice strong plant for next year. Some would argue that autumn is the beginning of the gardening year because you're planting your spring bulbs and it's a great time to plant. When I plant things now, I'm generally planting them for next year. So while what I plant will look nice, I am planting some hellebores. They are going to flower hopefully for me, but I am anticipating that these will look better next year. You will see that I'm using a lot of water. So even though we had a good bit of rain, which I was so happy for because I knew that the soil was drier from summer. My soil, especially in this border, come August time, I definitely have to water a bit more because it has dried up. However, we had some rain and I was delighted because I was like, yes, top layer of soil was nice and moist, but as I was digging down, it wasn't as damp and it was very free draining. Is that what they say, the horticulturists? I was just watering the deeper layer of soil before I put the plant in, just so the roots would kind of make their way down to find some water. And then I'm absolutely soaking them once they are planted, just to settle it all in, make sure there's no like trapped air and all of that good stuff. And what I'll do is I'll see what the rain is like for the next week, and then I'll give them a good soak if I feel like there hasn't been enough rain. It's important in the first year when you have any plant, whether it says it's drought tolerant or whatever, to water it in really well in the first year for the roots to establish, and then you can let it take a little bit of abuse. It's always good as well to give it a good soak versus a little sprinkle with a watering can, because that can encourage shallow roots. So if you just water the top of the soil, the roots will stay kind of at the top. So you want to get it nice and soaked and that water going deep down so that the roots will also grow downwards. I did my spring bulb order from Mr. Middleton. I got the catalogue. However, they haven't arrived yet. Some of the bulbs that I ordered were for pre-order. So I was like, ooh, these may be fancy ones. Now, I did get, can I remember? I ordered some snowdrops, I think, because I was thinking just a few snowdrops dotted in this area where the gaps are will be really nice in winter time. And I did order some cyclamen, some of the perennial cyclamen, and I'm going to dot that around where I have some gaps as well. As I was digging as well, I found some old daffodils. There is daffodils in this area, but more further up where the lighting is a bit better. But now that the trees have been trimmed, it's going to be interesting to see how all of the plants grow now that there's more, I suppose, there's more air circulating, there's more sunlight, and there's going to be more rainwater as well. So yeah, I'm excited to see how this border, how this little section of the border performs. The reason why I put the sneezeweed further up is because that's where the sun this time of year, that's where it kind of begins. So it's a sunnier spot from the midpoint of this border all the way up to the other little tree. Let me know in the comments section, have you had to redo a section in the garden, or have you been dividing up any plants for now that it's autumn, or are you putting the garden to bed? Are you done this time of year? Are you just like, do you know what, that's it, I'll see you in springtime? Let me know in the comments section what you've been getting up to in the garden, and we can have the chats.
This is as good a day as any to start the rebuilding of life. The roads that lay open are many when the old one's gone under the knife. And I can feel the sun on my skin, beginning to thaw from within. Today and not tomorrow, there's no time to borrow. Today is a good day to live. This morning has a clearer light as any to see the horizon in the far. Excuses were 2 for a penny, but they've all gone out the window of this car. And when I feel the wind on my face, all that ever was is good day to live. Today and not tomorrow.
Okay, this is looking much better than what I did this morning. I've left some gaps because there's actually a geum seedling there. There is another geranium, the pink one. It seems to do really well out the back, but not as good in the front. I have the anemones here, so these will give lovely bit of flower and a bit of height. And I love anemones because you can see through the flowers, if that makes sense. Like, they won't block a sight line, if that makes sense. Then little fern. Oh, let's all just say a little prayer that the fern settles in, because if that settled and grew over the next 10 years, it would be absolutely beautiful. I made sure not to plant it too close to the wall, so it is out a bit from the wall, even though on camera it looks like it's right next, but I did make sure to plant it a bit more forward so there's a bit of breathing room at the back. I was wondering why the brunnera looked a bit different. Yeah, it's a different variety. That's Jack Frost, that's Jack Frost. This is silver something, so it has a white flower. So I thought I'll make sure I'll put it at the back so it'll be blue, blue and white. So that'll be a nice clump when it fills out. Now I do have some gaps in between where I put the hellebores, so you can see that there's a good bit of gappage around here, and that's because I ordered some of these guys. So this is cyclamen, and I made sure to get the perennial one, which I think is hedrofolia, begins with H. I think there's two varieties of perennial one, but the one that's most common in the garden centre can just be an annual. So when I was placing my spring bulb order, I ordered some. So I'm going to dot them in wherever there's a tiny bit of gap. I'm hoping I'll have a nice bit of flower from the hellebore and the cyclamen throughout winter. There's a cyclamen grown up here called Winter Beauty. Then I'll have the foliage of heuchera and brunnera. I think the fern will keep its foliage. And yeah, this little corner will have something, and then as they all establish and the roots get settled in next year, this will look even better. But in springtime I'll have lovely blue flowers on this, and I'll also have the flowers on the hellebore because they flower right the way up early summer. They still have flower heads on them. I think what I'm going to do is put some small snowdrop bulbs around here as well. So yeah, I am happy with this. I know it doesn't look amazing straight away, but I think it looks much better. If I go back, hang on. I think this little corner looks much better than what it did before I started.
I am doing everything except what I'm supposed to be doing. I am supposed to be planting spring bulbs, but for some reason I just don't want to. So I am pottering, doing everything else. I think it's because where I want to put the spring bulbs, the ground is a bit hard. I want to put them into the grass where the meadow is. And the thoughts of having to dig there to put them in. It's actually a really nice autumnal sunny day today. I'm pottering about the garden to see what other jobs I need doing. As I was trimming back some of the herbs that are in the buckets in the front, I decided I wanted to go to the garden centre. Some of the pots in the front need a little bit of colour now that we're getting into the cooler season. I was also not caffeinated, so I decided to head to the garden centre to get some bedding plants, add a bit of colour, and also get myself a nice warm coffee. Have you ever seen such a weedy pot? There's actually, if you look closely, sadly, there's a dead rose. I got 4 bare root roses back in January, and 3 of them took and survived. I popped them into a pot. This little one did not take, and it is completely dead. The stem is absolutely black. I decided to put those 2 bargain asters that I got into a pot. When I was looking at them further, I think what has happened to them is they got too much water on the foliage. So I'm not sure if when they were getting watered in the garden centre, I found that the soil and the roots of the plant itself were really, really dry. So it could have been an issue that maybe it got too much rain or it didn't just get watered properly. But I reckon with popping this into a bigger pot, giving it a nice drink of water, and I'm going to give it a little feed as well because it is flowering. So I'm going to give it some liquid seaweed and I'll just see how it gets on over winter in the pot and what I can do. If it improves in condition, then next year I'm going to pop it into the border. So whenever I see a gap popping up, I'll stick it in. In my wheelbarrow, I have a mix of compost. So I have some compost that is from my hot bin. Then I have some compost that is old compost from pots. And then I did buy a fresh bag of potting mix. And I was actually able to get peat free. I was saying last year how it's a lot harder in the Irish garden centres to find peat free compost. I find in the UK a lot of people it's much easier to get. But thankfully, I was pleasantly surprised there was a lot of peat-free options available. It would be nice to see more Irish companies having peat-free compost because I do like to shop local. I know that Quick Crop, where I got my big bag of mulch from earlier in spring, I know that they do peat-free options as well. And I'm putting the pots together. What I'll do is I'll put the kind of crappy compost at the bottom. I'll make sure there's enough drainage as well. I probably do 2/3 new compost at the top, and then that third at the bottom is the old compost or compost that I've taken from the hot bin. I have some pots that already have spring bulbs in them. So they're like a bulb lasagna container. And I do have a video, it's on the Cottage Garden playlist. It might be from maybe 2 winters ago. Might have some from last year as well, where I did a bulb lasagna. So if you're planting pots, it's a fun way to have a consistent flow of spring bulbs. Do know that this long orange container, I have some hyacinths and I have tulips in them. So just to cover them from winter and also to give me a bit of colour in this area. I do need to redo these pots for winter, but I just wanted to add in some of the pansies and violas. And you'll see that I'm going to pack them in spring and summertime. If you're planting pansies, you'd probably give a bit more space. But because in winter, with the light changing, things don't grow as quickly or as full. So I am packing them in. I decided to pop the asters out into the front garden where, as my regular viewers might remember, I did a pot display in the front. Well, I only lost a lupin, so the slugs ate a lupin, but the other pots that I planted up back in, I think it was mid-May, maybe early June, I'm actually really surprised because a lot of them still have foliage and there's still some flowers on them. And I thought that these would be like absolutely gone, but there still is a bit of colour in them. And even having the foliage, it's nice when I come home, drive in the driveway. So I just popped some of the pots here just to give me a little bit of colour for now. And this shady border that I planted back in September time, if you saw it, those plants have settled in really nicely. I have been keeping on top with watering them. Because they're only newly planted, I didn't want them to dry out, but we did have a good bit of rain as well, so that has definitely helped the roots settle in. It's also getting close to that time of year where it's time to put the dahlias to bed, but while there's no sign of frost just yet, I can get away with it. Where I am on the east coast of Ireland and we're having walls in the garden, I have a bit of a microclimate where it's a little bit warm. Now I do get frost when it comes, but just not as bad as exposed areas, or if you're on like the west coast of Ireland, you probably get it quicker. So I get away with having the dahlias out a bit longer. I think what I'm going to do this year is the same as last year. I'm going to put what's in a pot in the greenhouse, and I think I'm going to mulch the dahlias in the beds like I did last year. This autumn, I have decided to do some spring bulbs in pots and containers. I do have a lot of bulbs already in the flower beds, and mostly daffodils, crocus, lots of alliums. I don't have as many tulips. I do have tulips in a cut flower bed, but I find year on year they start to kind of deteriorate. But I am going to get some tulips to pop in pots. Also, later in the video I have a really good book recommendation if you're into pots and containers and you're looking for some inspiration. One of the main reasons I want to do the spring bulbs in containers is because of the bulb foliage, mostly with daffodils. I find once they have finished flowering, you have to wait ages for that bulb foliage to die back. And it is advised to let the foliage go back until it goes yellow because all the goodness will go into the bulb for next year's flower. However, I find sometimes, and especially in the flower borders, in the flower beds, it can look a bit messy for a couple of weeks. So I've decided I still want spring bulbs because they make me happy. And I love the long growing season that we have. I love spring bulbs. But I am going to get a bit smarter and I'm going to do them in containers because then when those containers are dying off, I can just move them around to the side of the greenhouse and let them die back. Sitting up in the storage nook was this random ice bucket, and I have not used this ice bucket since it's been up there, so I decided it was time to turn it into a nice bulb planter. I'm doing a little bit of lasagna planting, so I'm popping in these daffodils that I'm hoping they're going to have a lovely orangey colour. They're a little bit different. I do have some white daffodils in the border beside, but I wanted to go for this lovely vibrant orange colour. I think it'd be really nice on a spring afternoon when it's a bit dull. I think it'll look nice. I am going to put some crocus as well on top of this. What I like about the ice bucket is it's perfect for bulbs because it's not too deep. It's nice and wide as well. And I am packing the bulbs into this. I'm putting them much more closer together than you would if you were putting these in a border. I am packing them in because I want a really full, juicy display. Back in the garden, and I want to plant some bulbs in the front in the new raised beds. Before that, I want to do a little bit of tidying up. Now, touch wood, so far this autumn, and now I have to be careful because there is a few trees that are late losing their leaves, but since the trees were trimmed on the other side of the wall, there is probably a fraction of my usual leaf cleaning up. Now I know that that will probably change in a few weeks when the last of the leaves fall in November. I adjusted the height on the lawnmower as well so that it is nice and high. Whenever I'm cutting the grass this time of year, it's mostly just hoovering up the leaves. I do make leaf mulch as well. However, the leaves that were on the grass today were a bit dry. So I like to make leaf molds with lovely, wet, soggy leaves. So I'll wait until there has been lots of rain and then I will gather the leaves up. I had a little patch, my regular viewers will remember, where I just let the grass grow and I don't cut it. Kind of like no mow May but no mow summer. And the reason why I have to give it a trim now is because there's loads of crocus there. And I don't want them to be hidden by all of that creeping buttercup, so I just gave it a trim. I wanted to just make a start at doing a bit of tidying up. I kind of feel like it's a losing battle, but it gives me great satisfaction, even if it's only tidy and leaf free for a few hours. Something else about this time of year with the darker afternoons, even the mornings, just lack of sunlight. Whenever it is sunny, that autumn winter sunshine just hits different as well. I love that low, it just makes everything look golden and pretty. But something that definitely helps keep my mood in check this time of year is just going out and doing simple cleaning jobs. Even if it's just 20 minutes, 30 minutes, getting out and getting some vitamin D, it definitely helps when it's a sunny day. And today it wasn't as cold as when I was filming yesterday. And that definitely makes it all the more easy to get out into the garden. I know from chatting to a couple of you guys from previous years on the channel that a couple of you do suffer this time of year with the lack of light and the low lighting levels, and it affects your energy and your mood. I find for me, getting out first thing in the morning before work if I can and getting natural sunlight, even if it's grey, I'll take anything. So I try and even drink my cup of tea in the garden with my slippers on and my robe just to get that natural sunlight. And then if I'm on a day off like today, I like to get out into the garden, get some vitamin D, even if it's only for a couple of minutes or an hour or two. If you do want to make leaf mold or use leaves as mulch, I will briefly explain how I do it, but if you want, the next time I'm in the garden and I'm gathering up leaves, I can make a video for you. So if you want to make leaf mold, what you need is lovely wet juicy leaves, and you're going to need, you can actually get these little sacks, they're like Hessian sacks, but you can use a plastic bin bag. So bag up your wet leaves and tie a knot, and then use something sharp like a scissors to punch in some air holes. And then store that leaves to go nice and moldy. You can put it behind a shed. I pop them behind the greenhouse, and you just let that rot away for a couple of months. And then in summertime, that will be all broken down and moldy, and you can use that then as a mulch on the base of your plants, so around the bottom. Another thing I do if I want to just mulch it, I don't want to bag it up or store it. What I'll do is I will mow the leaves, so I'll brush them. Also, I do have a leaf blower. You'll see me sweeping the paths. That just gives me joy and it's a little bit of cardio, but I do have a leaf blower. What I'll do is I'll blow the leaves onto a patch of grass and I will mow them. And the reason I mow the leaves is because I'm breaking them down so that they're not big and chunky. And then I just take the box, well, I mow it, all of my mulchy leaves, broken down leaves will be in the box of the lawnmower, and then I just put that on the plants in winter. So if I'm probably going to leave the dahlias, I'm not going to dig them up. What I'll do is I'll put a layer, maybe farmyard manure, then I'll do some leaves, maybe some bark, just to give me some thickness above the bulb. So that is 2 ways that I use the leaves that the trees give me. God gives me leaves. We turn them into leaf mulch, and it's a nice conditioner for the soil. You're basically just using what you have, or you could just compost it. Now, if you're wondering what am I doing outside sweeping up the path, I have been so embarrassed by the state of the curb. So I don't know who is responsible for cleaning the road. Is it the council? This is the patch right outside my house, and it has a garden of weeds. There's some cracks in the path where there is just some weeds growing. I actually just let them flower during the summertime because I was like, hey, it's in flower, so be on it. We will leave it be. But every time I drive into the driveway, I'm like, oh my God, I'm trying to make my front garden look nice and pretty. And here I am with weeds growing out of the cracks. Now, I don't mind pretty weeds growing. So if there was some erigeron or even some campanula, but no, they're just your good old dandelions. No shade to the dandelions. They are quite beneficial. But I decided I was going to clean this weedy corner up. I was actually afraid to give out to the council because in case they would spray it with weed killer, and I don't want them to come along and spray the weeds. So it only took me 20 minutes to hack at this with my shovel and my sweeping brush. And I haven't done it in like a year or more. So that's a year of growth and it's gone in 20 minutes. So I don't mind that. What I don't want is the council to come along with chemicals and weed killer and all of that. I don't know if they use weed killer, but that would just be my fear. So yeah, it makes for some satisfying cleaning though. And now for some bulbs in the front. So the raised beds in the front are new. They were built in April this year. I have loads of perennials and shrubs in it and I have no bulbs. It's so full already. I have managed to pack this and I'll probably lose one or two plants once the shrubs start to establish and get bigger. I might lose some of the perennials, but I'll keep an eye on them and I can move them around. I've decided against popping in spring bulbs in here, so the likes of daffodils and tulips, because of the foliage. I do have daffodils on the border on the left of the garden, so I will still have loads of spring bulbs, just not in this section. Instead, I've opted for, I'm doing two different plants. So I'm doing some allium starlight. And allium starlight, if you look it up, it's very whimsical, nice and tall. It looks like a little dainty flower on it. It's not like your allium globe masters. I think it might flower around about June time, so it might be nice to give me a height. I think it would look pretty with other plants that have height, the likes of foxgloves and lupins. So I'm popping some of that in, and then the other bulb that I have a group of 3 of them, and it's Fritillaria, can't say it, Ivory Bells. This, I believe, flowers late May, and it's giving me foxglove vibes, as in it has a lovely bit of height, kind of like a verbascum. Something that I wanted to do this year, but I never got around to doing it, is treat the green algae that pops up in the garden. So either I'm really late doing it, or I am really early for doing it for next year. I absolutely swear by a product that is called Algon. It's like a natural way to remove the green algae that I find that I get on wood. I find that this green algae doesn't lift when you power wash it. Some of it will come off, but I find it's quite stubborn on the raised beds and on the greenhouse. Last year I used this product on the greenhouse and the raised beds and it definitely worked. But this year, I just didn't get around to doing it. You can use this product anytime throughout the year. You dilute it with water. I think it's 1 part Algon to 4 parts water, maybe 5. It's all the information is on the back of the thing. I bought my Algon from Pagola Nurseries in Cavan. You probably follow him on Instagram. It's so relaxing to watch. You can actually use this on pathways and stuff, but I just love it for treating wooden pieces in my garden. So I got a handy spray bottle and just mix it together, and I'm just spraying it on all of the wooden pieces in the garden and giving it a good soak. And you need just a period of dry, so check the weather and see if there is going to be any rain. Thankfully I had a couple of days where there was no rain forecasted, so you let it dry and soak in, and then it's supposed to just work within 2 weeks. Obviously in winter it's going to take a little bit longer to work, and you can repeat the process as well. But as always, if you just subscribe, cheeky subscribe there, and if you follow along, I will obviously show you in future videos how you will see for yourself how much of the algae is gone. So I decided I was going to do it now, and then if I need to give it a little top up in springtime. But I'm going to try and get ahead of myself, and maybe it might stop and prevent any more from kind of growing. It's more so the greenhouse that I wanted to just get that green look off. What I like about it is that it is pet friendly and non-toxic. It does say on the bottle though that it can scorch the grass or it can scorch the tip of the leaves of plants. So it does say, however, that I won't kill it. So just something to bear in mind. There are other patio cleaners. I think one of them is called Patio Magic, and when I read the label on that, it was like you must keep your pets in for a couple of days and harmful to this, that and the other. So I don't like using things like this. Algon, I think it must have vinegar in it, so maybe you could do a vinegar solution. I'm not too sure what the ingredients are, but if you have used this before, you probably notice that there is a strong smell of vinegar in it. So I don't know, maybe it is that. If you have a little Google, you might be able to do a DIY cleaner version with some vinegar solution. When it comes to pottering about and doing jobs in the garden in winter, I wanted to just say that you don't have to at all. Winter is definitely a season for cozying up, hibernating and letting things just be. So if you see me pottering in the garden, please don't feel the need to break your slumber or your hibernation. I always say that I want people to feel motivated by videos, but you don't have to do what I'm doing. And the motivation behind me being out in the garden is purely to get a bit of serotonin. Sometimes if I am struggling on a down day, or maybe I'm resisting the urge for a nap because it's only 2 in the afternoon and it feels really dark, I find if I can just do a little hour, and this video was filmed over, a couple of days, so I will just go outside, do a little job, feel a little bit of satisfaction, and hope that I have gotten some solar power from the sun. I read somewhere that this time of year, if you can get outside within like the first few hours upon waking, so if you like maybe walk to work, or if you're in daylight with your commute, if you can try and get outside first thing, even though it's grey, it's supposed to massively help your mood as well. Over the years, I have bought the light boxes. I have one of those sad lamps for seasonal affective disorder. I have the alarm clock that gradually wakes you up, but I find getting outside is the one thing that helps me. All those other things I find, yeah, they help, but the one thing that benefits me is getting outside, even when I don't want to do it. I always feel better afterwards. Because of the mild weather that we've been having in November, I've been quite slow putting the garden to bed. There hasn't been much or any frost really, which has been great. There's a couple of dahlias still on the go, but I am starting to just cut them back and slowly put the garden to bed. I think I remember last year was cooler and I was a bit more, I think, on the ball with, mulching and cutting back the dahlias and things like that. But I've definitely been a bit slower putting it to bed, and it's definitely down to the mild weather that we've been having. A couple of videos back, also if you want to see any previous garden videos, I do have a playlist on the channel where it's just the garden videos. So if you are only interested in garden content and not so much home or craft or DIY, then I'll pop a card to that playlist where you can watch previous videos. Now this year, I have less leaves. I said a couple of videos back that some of the branches that were starting to kind of touch the house and stuff had been trimmed by the council. And as a result, while I still have lovely leaves that I can collect and make some leaf mold, I don't have the mountain of leaves that I would normally have. I've noticed over the years that leaves can be a bit of a controversial topic. Do you know what? Each to their own. Whether you want to just sweep them and bag them up, or compost them, use them as a mulch, or make leaf mold. There is loads of uses for them. They're also great little hibernation corners for any bugs wanting to overwinter. I find what works best for me is using them as mulch. I do collect 1 or 2 bags of wet leaves and I bag them up in a plastic bag, make sure they're nice and moist. Tie the bag up, add a few air holes, and I let that bag rot away for a couple of months. And then in summertime, that will be nice and moldy and you can use it as a mulch. It'll be like a leaf mold, like loads of fungus and goodness will grow. But I find I mostly I'll blow it into the kind of woodland corner. If there's already leaves in the flower beds, I just leave them to rot down. They're their own mulch. And then any of the ones that are on pathways, I will blow them and mow them, blow them and mow them. And then I will sprinkle those leaf cuttings that are nice and fine. I'll pop them around the trees in the little woodland corner or on a flower bed. My lawnmower came with an attachment that I can't actually find, but it's a mulch attachment. So you can take the box off and you put this spreader on it. And yeah, you can mow the leaves and it'll mulch it onto the surface. I find it kind of does that anyway. So you can leave your leaves on the grass. And Monty Dunn said it in the last episode of this season's Gardener's World about leaves, that if it's on the grass, you can just leave it and it'll die down and it will enhance your grass for next year. So I've kind of done that in the front where I've blown it onto the grass where I have the little meadow patch, which I haven't cut actually yet. I'll mow the leaves. I also have my lawnmower on a higher setting, so I've raised it so try not damage the grass underneath. And as I'm mowing, lots of the finely cut leaf clippings actually go into the grass. And then I just use the rest of it as a mulch around the base of any trees that I have in the garden. I normally try to do everything all at once and the whole job has to be complete on the day. But something that I've learned to do is just give myself grace and actually just find the satisfaction in just doing one little thing. So not every leaf needs to be picked up. The garden does not have to look perfect and tidy and clean. I think when you do things with the motivation to just feel better and not with the motivation of this has to be perfect, I think you just enjoy the job you're doing. I'm using my leaf blower today, but I quite enjoy just sweeping the path. There is nothing more satisfying than sweeping your path and having the driveway looking clean, even if it's only for an hour. So that was a full year in my garden. I have a playlist on my channel, the Cottage Garden playlist. And I also have visited a couple of gardens this year if you are looking for some inspiration from the professionals. I also have a video on the Chelsea Flower Show and the Bloom Flower Festival in Ireland. And I visited a couple of pretty gardens because it's nice to get real life inspiration. And while flower shows are nice to look at and pretty, they are perfect, aren't they? they're put together for that moment in time. So I love to visit real gardens that probably have a slug or two, a bit of green fly, and I find them just more relatable. So you'll find those videos on the Cottage Garden playlist if you want to watch more garden videos. Also, if you've made it this far in the video, well, thank you, and you may as well stick around. So hit the subscribe button, give this video a cheeky thumbs up, and join the community, and let's see what we can grow in 2025.